The largest and most adopted enterprise password manager got breached through a developer that had access into the production environment, so all of the user vaults, through his home network.
Hey, this is Martha DeGrasse here again for the Wi-Fi Alliance, and this is our podcast, The Signal. If this is your first time joining us, thank you very much for being here. We want to deliver insight and perspective on the growing portfolio of Wi-Fi technologies that we see changing the connectivity landscape. If you're already familiar with our podcast, please take a minute to rate or review on your favorite podcast app. In this episode, we are very excited to welcome JJ Minella. She is founder and principal advisor on security architecture at Viszen Security. JJ, thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Martha. Great to be here.
Yeah, we're excited. You're a podcast host yourself, so it's fun to have another podcast host here. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I'm a security architect primarily, so I consult with organizations who are trying to solve relatively complex problems and figure out how can we use the solutions and the technologies they have in place to get them from posture point A to point B. Ideally using the things they have, but sometimes it involves either re-architecting what they have or adding some solutions into the space.
All right, excellent. Well, since this is the signal for the Wi-Fi Alliance, let's start with the basics. What are the most pressing cybersecurity threats facing Wi-Fi networks today?
Well, we've seen a lot of relatively innovative attacks recently, like the nearest neighbor that exploits what we consider to be even secure networks running 802.1x, but where a user can join with credentials from a device that may not be known or managed from the organization. So we have the wide range of fruit flavors of novel attacks that happen leveraging either over the air or the properties of Wi-Fi or authentication. And I mean, for the past 10 years or so, I've been just beating the drum across security architecture that the impact of complexity on security is challenging, and architecting is hard when you're trying to put all of the puzzle pieces together. The more knobs something has, the harder it is to make sure that you've got that whole chain of security configured properly. And especially in Wi-Fi, because you've got everything from the user and the identity of the person on the machine, on the network, back to the authentication servers if we're doing that. So yeah, really reducing complexity, I think, helps us all in architecting. And I think one of the things, if you look at the standard, the 802.11 standard, which is now many thousands of pages from the IEEE, we have a lot of backwards compatibility from the first days of Wi-Fi back in the late 90s when we had WEP security, which has been around since 1997. And the 2024 spec that actually just came out this year in 2025 is the first time that security protocol rolled off of the spec. So we had it for 27 years. And I think the Wi-Fi Alliance, one of the things I love about them is they do such an amazing job bridging that what's now an 8,000 page document and making it usable for the billions of people and devices around the world.
Yeah, well, thanks. That's great to hear. So as you point out, security can be at the device level, it can be back at the authentication server, it can be in the network. So thinking about the endpoint and the user and the billions of devices that are out there now, I think there are more than 20 billion Wi-Fi connected devices out there now, a billion of those using 6 gigahertz spectrum, I think. So how can users ensure as best they can that they're protected?
In an individual user perspective?
Right.
Yeah. It's crazy because we have a whole chain back to that whole endpoint. Now you're talking about also, though, applications thrown into that for personal cybersecurity. So it doesn't have anything to do specifically with Wi-Fi necessarily, but I think one of the biggest things we can do individually is use multi-factor authentication and then layer that with unique passwords for everything and use a password manager to manage that so that we're not reusing passwords because our credentials are, whether we want to or not, they're being harvested from applications, from web browsers, from our mobile phones. And there's nothing network security can do to prevent that at the application level.
Okay. And what about the endpoint devices that are not human controlled, all those IoT devices? Isn't there a little bit of a trade-off there between performance and battery life versus first level security?
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things we have for any endpoint on a network, and this is wired or wireless, is that we don't really have reliable device identity. So we were using MAC addresses for a long time. And of course, IEEE started, MAC randomization protocols so that those are rotating now. We can't tell what a device is based on that. And we can't even identify it necessarily from one point in time to another. So it really messed up a lot of our network operations, security operations. So I'm hoping we're going to see a world where we're like the industry's moving towards device certificates. And I think that's really impactful with IoT. And I think even we have some fantastic examples from IoT because the whole Matter framework, IoT specification from Connectivity Standards Alliance uses device certificates. So we know it's possible. It can be done. I'd love to see that brought more into the rest of infrastructure and enterprise. As far as battery life, so obviously being a security architect, these are security lenses that I'm giving you answers from, but I'm always thinking about cryptography. I think we had Elliptic Curve that did a great job at preserving battery life for IoT devices or anything battery powered. So they're just less stressful on the device, less processing power. I think post-quantum is going to be an interesting thing for us to watch. And then when it comes to battery life, the 802.11 spec, for me poking at it for how long it is, one of the things that they do a really good job is building in methods for preserving battery life for devices. So there's lots of battery saving modes built into the spec. I'm personally very optimistic about the advances in battery technology as a whole. I feel like in the, 90s or so after lithium ion, there was this phase where the industry said, oh, well, cars are never going to be battery powered. So we stopped thinking about battery development for a long time and we just sort of coasted. But now we're refocusing on the issue. So scientists and chemists are mixing and matching materials for anodes and cathodes to see, can we get better energy storage? We've got solid state lithium, lithium sulfur, lithium air coming. So I'm kind of optimistic that we're going to have we have these new challenges, but I think we're going to have also from a battery life perspective, an energy harvesting. I feel like we're going to, especially for IoT, that's a part of the world that I think is going to be uniquely positioned to do some really cool stuff.
What kind of cool stuff are you expecting?
Well, all of the developments that they're going to be having in battery development, right? So a battery that can last longer, a battery that can store more energy. So all of that moved into a small form factor. So we have more flexibility. If we have a battery life that's longer and more capable, and we have processing power that's going to continue to shrink down until it can't anymore, we can do more with the same IoT device from a security perspective.
Great. Okay, switching back to Wi-Fi specifically, are there any cybersecurity implications that are specific to the 6 gigahertz band?
Yes. Well, and I think, so one of the classes and things that I do a lot with is WPA3 security, which of course is required. So that's the new protocol for Wi-Fi security that replaced WPA2. And the 6 gigahertz band requires that. That's kind of like, you must be this tall to ride the ride entry point. And I think throughout the whole time, the whole life of 802.11, they have tied security capabilities and requirements to the PHY, to the physical layer and what's happening. So there's different flavors of WPA3, and even in Wi-Fi 7 in the 6 gigahertz band, there's different requirements than 6 gigahertz in some of the other generations of Wi-Fi, right? So right. Wi-Fi 6. So it's really interesting. Now, I'm a huge fan anytime we have something greenfield. As a security professional, I see that's a huge opportunity to just clean the slate, start fresh, set new heights for you got to be this tall to ride the ride when it comes to security. So yeah, I think the security implications are we've stopped some of the backwards compatibility and some of the, I'm air quoting, transition modes in the 6 gigahertz spectrum. And that makes me really happy as a security architect. I think that's a fantastic place to start and move forward.
Okay. All right. Great. Now, one of the things that people are going to be doing more and more of on their Wi-Fi connected devices is on-device AI. There's already a lot of AI applications that people are using on their Wi-Fi connected devices. I think I read that 87% of security professionals have already encountered an AI-driven cyber attack. But what about, I'm not sure what that means, but it's a memorable statistic. So what about AI for defense, though, against cyber attacks?
Yeah. And Martha, let me just tell you that nobody is sure what that statistic means. And it's funny because I just came off an IANS briefing where we were briefing IANS clients on different news stories for the week. And one of them was the AI automated malware that's out there. And it's really just the Google threat intelligence group and some other researchers debunked some of that or
Oh,
de-escalated
good.
some of that. Yeah, but it's coming, right? It's definitely coming. It's not the headline that it is pretending to be at the moment. But I do see, you mentioned defensive, and I do see defensive use cases for behavioral anomaly detection, especially in wireless and wired networks. But wireless, I think if you have something that can analyze the spectrum, you have so much more visibility and data to work with than something that's just watching
Okay.
packets go back and forth. I've worked with Wi-Fi for a very long time, pre-standard before Wi-Fi was even a brand, and it was just WLANs, and then they started adding the letters when we had the generations of A and then B and then G, et cetera. And I remember when I first started really doing business Wi-Fi, we had WIPs, we had wireless intrusion prevention systems that went almost with every install of Wi-Fi for a regulated industry. And then the PCI DSS, so the payment card requirements for Wi-Fi security that specified WIPs, that requirement fell off. And so WIPs just kind of as a product set disappeared. And then we started seeing, I think the industry is coming back to it. We started seeing AP vendors, so like the enterprise AP vendors, building certain WIPs capabilities into their products. But they've been, I would say, a little lacking, a little weak. Like it's just enough to check a button and say, oh, there's a rogue access point here, or there's a honeypot in your environment. And a lot of the attention for AI in the Wi-Fi world up to now has really been for net ops, so network operations. How can we streamline and reduce some of the manual tasks that we have? But I think the SecOps, those security operations and the things that happen out of a SOC, I think that's what's about to change. And all of these AP vendors are going to be pivoting a little bit to leverage all of the AI they're building for net ops into better SecOps for exactly what you were just describing with that defensive use case of can we detect attacks, and then they can look at it both over the air and then at layer 2 and up.
All right, excellent. That's great information. Thank you very much for sharing all that. Okay, now we hear a lot about zero trust, never trust, always verify. How does that apply in Wi-Fi environments, particularly at home?
Zero trust, this is hard because zero trust, it depends on who you ask as to whose, definition that they use. I like what you just said, that it's the don't extend inherent trust. You want to always verify. So the idea, lots of organizations tend to take the approach of zero trust exists to protect data. And that's its only purpose in life. Now, I think probably most people involved with IoT and Wi-Fi and other wireless technologies that are involved with infrastructure have a slightly different view of that, because we do care about the network and we do care about the infrastructure, because a lot of these IoT devices and OT connections are running critical operations, manufacturing, utilities, et cetera. So it's not just about the data, unless you say, okay, well, the data getting from the sensor back to is the important part. So, but zero trust is hard because we back to that identity problem that we don't really have solid device identity. We might have user identity figured out, but how do we know that this device is that device with some immutable identity that we can authenticate against and then authorize against? So the authenticate, right? Prove who you are. And then the authorize is now based on who you are, let me tell you what you can and can't do. And that's the underlying principle of zero trust. So if we're missing that foundational block, it's hard to do the follow on. And at home, I think the best thing we can start to do at home really is to, as much as we can, at least make separate Wi-Fi networks over the air, like separate SSIDs for things. A lot of home wireless equipment, if you get it from your ISP, like the CPE equipment that they give to you, it doesn't necessarily have the capabilities for any advanced segmentation. You may or may not even be able to do VLANs, virtual LANs. You certainly can't do a lot of virtualized networking. You may or may not be able to do access control list or firewall type of features on it. So you're really kind of limited in the home by what type of device you have. And so actually at RSA this year, they asked me to do a talk on network security and wireless security for home in their protecting home and family track. And we talk through it. Depends, right? Are you just look, I just need my Instagram to work and my Netflix to work? Are you a little bit more tech savvy where you want something better than that? If you know better, do better. Or are you targeted because you're a public figure a political figure, a sports figure, the head of a company, in which case the controls, back to the zero trust, the controls of the extent that we go to protect each of those tiers changes.
Wow, that's really a lot to think about. Yeah. Okay, I guess, I never even really thought about how security is a whole different ballgame for public figures. I mean, their physical security, they have bodyguards and everything, but yeah, they're cyber security too. You're right. Okay, what about Wi-Fi 8? As Wi-Fi 8 develops, are there security capabilities or frameworks that should be prioritized to stay ahead of emerging threats and to support these massive IoT developments?
Yeah, probably. Now, I'm gonna share JJ's imaginary perfect world of what the next version of Wi-Fi is look like, because I know probably a lot of people listening to this are involved in developing it, and I don't have visibility into Wi-Fi that far out that they're developing. That's not where I live and work. So in my imaginary perfect world, I would love to see, from a security capability standpoint, things like, post-quantum work done. Now, I know groups within the IEEE are working on that now. Smart people are working on that. It's not an easy problem to solve. Back to the identity thing, I would love to see enforcement of some type of unique device identities, let's say certificates. I think that's a fantastic path, which would then let us enforce this 802.1x, I'm air quoting, enterprise grade security that we could use both at home and in the work. And again, IoT is already doing this with Matter. So we have certificates, the technology's there.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's very encouraging, and it's good to think that some of the work has already been done. But I can't believe you're talking about post-quantum, to be honest, because I thought we were still in the pre-quantum world, but I guess it's just how much I know.
Well, here's the thing. I think there's some confusion out there about what post-quantum crypto or quantum-resistant cryptography is, because we're not we are in the quantum world. We're not fully into the quantum computing world yet. Quantum just reached its 100-year anniversary. So we've been doing quantum things for a while in different ways. Now, in the US, and I stay mostly familiar with what's happening in US regulations. Obviously, there's stuff in other parts in the world, but our federal government, which is typically in line with most of Europe and most of Asia, we have the CNSA suite, which has been the Commercial National Security Algorithm or whatever it is. And that's what the federal government says for federal agencies of certain types of systems. Anything that's high risk, that you have to meet these requirements. So the CNSA 2.0 requirements is with post-quantum crypto. And what that means is if somebody develops a quantum computer that can break, there's kind of two problems. One of them is in the near future and one of them is in the far future. The one in the near future is it breaking the asymmetric algorithms that we have. So those are how we do all of our key exchanges though. Right? That's everything that drives PKI, public key cryptography. That's the RSA suite, that's elliptic curve. So that's when people talk about Shor's algorithm, that's what they're talking about, that a quantum computer will be able to break our asymmetric cryptography in seconds at some point in the relatively near future. So when we talk about post-quantum crypto and quantum resistant, it's not that we're using quantum computers to do cryptography for us, but it's that we're preparing our infrastructures so that when somebody does have that, they can't launch an attack. They can't have harvested a bunch of data and then decrypt it later with that quantum computer. Now, how far off is that? The federal government here is estimating that they're demanding that the agencies and data and scope for CNSA2 be implemented by 2035. It's 2025 right now. We're at the end of 2025, and everybody's probably thinking, well, that's still 10 years out. But 10 years is not a long time to flip an entire infrastructure and rework all of the cryptography. These are algorithms that we use in everything from browsers to over-the-air encryption for any wireless technology, not just Wi-Fi, to all of the applications, the databases that are storing critical information. And so there are also a group of experts that predict, and I'm kind of leaning towards this other number here, because of the money infused into post-quantum computing, we believe that we're probably closer to 2028, 2030 when somebody's going to figure that out in a meaningful way. And so now you're talking about 5, 6, 7, 8 years, not 10 years. So let me rewind for a second. All right, Martha, I told you that when we talked about the Wi-Fi spec, we just deprecated a security suite that was developed in 1997. It was there for 27 years. So when we start talking about something that's 5 to 10 years out, it's really not that far out. We've got to rebake this into everything that we do. Now, the farther out thing is Grover's algorithm that talks about breaking symmetric encryption. And we're not there yet. I think that's way farther out. But the immediate thing is we've got to figure out post-quantum crypto in every aspect of everything that we do, every application.
All right. Well, I'm going to leave that to you, JJ.
I'm going to leave it to people that are way smarter than I am and hope that they do figure that out. Yeah.
All right. From post-quantum crypto back to the everyday person with their smartphone, as we wrap up, what is one cybersecurity tip you'd want listeners to come away with?
Okay. So I think this is two parts. One, the idea that home and personal use and business use are separate, I think is an illusion. I know that we have work and we have personal stuff. A lot of the attacks we see are because of reuse or commingling of credentials and identities that move between these. We also are in a time right now where the majority of our workforce works from home.
White collar, for sure, yeah.
Yeah. So the home network is now your office network. So I don't think there's this separation, this idea that, oh, it's just my personal network and therefore. So let's talk about one of the biggest breaches that happened in the past few years was LastPass, which is a password manager. I'm not picking on them. It's just a really good lesson learned, I think. That breach, so the largest and most adopted enterprise password manager got breached through a developer that had access into the production environment, so all of the user vaults, through his home network.
Oh my God.
That's how they got in and pivoted through. So we are starting to see just a different way of thinking about it. And that this idea of like home and work, it's blurred. It's a gray, blurry, wiggly line and not this hard black line of I go to the office and I do my thing and then I come home. So that's, I think that the biggest piece is that those lines are blurred and we need to think about protecting ourselves and our businesses if we're concerned about that kind of more holistically and move the lessons learned between them and take back to matter right with devices. That's all right now for smart home technology. Mm-hmm. I'd love to see that come into the enterprise. There's a lot of stuff we do in the enterprise, like 1X security. I'd love to see come back into the home.
Oh, that's a great idea. All right. Jennifer J.J. Minella, founder and principal advisor on security architecture at Viszen Security. Thank you so much for being here today. This has been really great.
Thanks, Martha.
I hope you can come back again. And that is our show for today. If you haven't already, be sure to follow The Signal on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. Get your episode downloaded straight to your device as well. If you like what you've been hearing, we hope you'll take a moment to rate and review and help our show bring new Wi-Fi insights and perspectives to more listeners. I'm Martha DeGrasse here for the Wi-Fi Alliance. Please join us next time on The Signal.